And we're following the latest developments on the $12 billion weapons deal between the U.S. and Qatar. The Qatari ambassador to the U.S. tweeted this photo of the deal signing with U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis yesterday.
The agreement allows Qatar to buy F-15 fighter jets from the U.S., and this comes just days after President Trump accused the Mideast ally of funding terrorism at, quote, a very high level. CBS News Foreign Affairs and White House correspondent Margaret Brennan is following the latest from the North Lawn. Margaret, okay, so the president tweets out his criticism of Qatar and praises other Mideast nations for cutting off diplomatic ties. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson encourages those very same nations to find some sort of a resolution. And now we are striking a $12 billion deal to sell them arms. Please explain the significance of this and how we got here.
Yes, on this issue, which I want to just remind people why this tiny emirate called Qatar is really of direct national security interest to the U.S., and that's because we have more than 10,000 troops based there. This is the forward operating base for CENTCOM. This is where the air campaign against ISIS is in many ways commanded out of. So that is why it really matters to our U.S. military, and strategically it's important to the U.S. Now, you're exactly right. You illustrated what for many diplomats has been whiplash over the past 2 weeks or so, because you had the president seeming to endorse this blockade in many ways, taking credit for it, saying this was the result of his meetings in Riyadh and this agreement to push back against funding of terrorism, which he lumped Qatar in there, saying that at the very highest levels of government, they have a history of funding terrorism. Very critical there. However, you had the Secretary of State on the very same day saying, let's have cooler heads prevail. Yes, we're concerned broadly about funding of terrorism, but we're concerned about the humanitarian impact of a blockade. We're concerned it could disrupt U.S. military operations, and everyone needs to sort of lower tensions. So diplomatically, that has all been happening at the same time that you have just yesterday the defense secretary signing this letter of offer and acceptance for $12 billion of F-15 fighter jets that the U.S. is selling to Qatar. So once again, you have what seems to be different national security strategies coming out of the Trump administration, depending on who you're talking to. Now, it is not unusual for the U.S. to sell Qatar weapons, and it's not unusual for the U.S. to be selling major Gulf countries weapons. What is unusual is that this deal was not halted, because the president made very clear he was serious when he tweeted that and when he spoke from the Rose Garden just on Friday about his level of concern related to Qatar. However, then he sells $12 billion of weapons. To be fair, this was a request that was made under the Obama administration, but the letter of acceptance was signed yesterday in Washington. So President Trump decided not to intervene to stop this, despite what he has said are his levels of concern there. And we have what seems to be now the Trump administration, through the Secretary of State, trying to mediate here and trying to lower tensions and broker some deal without appearing to contradict the president. So there's been a little bit of embarrassment, I think it's fair to say, about all these mixed messages, and the U.S. is now trying to help lower the tension.
But how exactly, Margaret, are they trying to help lower the tensions? I mean, that is going to need to bring Saudi Arabia in. We know that Turkey had, sent their diplomat there to Qatar. Where are we on actually lowering the tensions in the region?
Right. Well, up to this point, a lot of the diplomacy has been one-on-one. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has met with the Saudi foreign minister. He's met with the UAE and other regional powers. And I learned this morning from a senior Qatari official that their foreign minister will be flying here to Washington to meet with the Secretary of State. However, none of them have sat down at the same table to hash this out. Other regional powers have tried to do that for them. But it's clear that the Qatari government wants the U.S. to be in the middle of this, because the U.S. has so much leverage and power because of our financial ties, our military ties, and they are saying here that the U.S. really needs to help them come to an understanding. And what I've been told by senior Qatari officials is that not only do they want the Secretary of State doing this, but they have been assured that those perceived threats that the president has made in terms of talking about supporting Saudi and being frustrated with Qatar Qatar, that they have been told to really focus in instead on the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense, who are trying to lower the tensions here. So that's significant to have foreign leaders being told, disregard that angry, sort of message you heard and focus instead here on the diplomats. It's not the kind of administration tendency that you've seen in the past to really speak with one voice from the same page. There are a lot of contradictory things here, and there is some concern from some diplomats that foreign powers could use that as leverage to their own benefit and kind of exploit some of these divisions that they're seeing within the administration.
Margaret Brennan, thank you for offering some clarity.